preparing to live stream. This is July, right?
It's already the 8th. Quarter gone.
I just got a notification that it's streaming live on YouTube right now.
Okay. That's a positive. Jen, describe to me what you're seeing on your screen.
There was a tiny notification that came up that said,
Oh,
You're
okay,
now
no, but I mean, right now, like, do you see that screen? Like, do you see like the Zoom screen is what you see?
She sees
Yeah.
us.
yeah, I
Okay,
see, I have 4 squares on
okay,
mine.
okay. Yeah, I got you.
So yeah, we're live.
Okay, so we are live. Sorry about the delay. This is the Old Farm District, July 2024 board meeting. We are meeting, I guess now in classroom A of the Larkspur Center, not the senior center, same building, just a different little spot in the building, classroom A. Going forward, the entrance is by the main entrance of the swim center. My name is James DeRofi. I'm the current board chair. Let's just do some quick introductions.
Carolyn Johnson, land use chair.
Ross Tinty, Brian Kennedy.
And we have a guest,
Jim Christo, board chair of Southeast Bend.
and Jennifer.
Jen Sawyer, social media.
And looks like we have one guest. If you have any questions, just interrupt or raise your hand. We don't expect too many people in this meeting. There's going to be a brief rundown of where we are at. So it is a new fiscal year for the city of Bend, which means it's a new fiscal year for the neighborhood associations. The city slashed the neighborhood association budgets by 40-something%. There's a few other rules that they've also changed. We don't know at this point what we're going to do going forward. We had been working for the past few years to get back to pre-pandemic levels of concepts, and now we have to decide what to do. I say that because we still have certain tasks that we have responsibilities for. And right now the board is going to sort of just chat about that. Jim, I know you're with Southeast Bend, but today's meeting, I'm just going to say chime in anytime, because we basically have been speaking for the last 45 minutes. We came up with lots of questions and no real direction or anything going forward.
So, I do have a question. So did you get some sort of notice that's what they were doing? Because I've got nothing.
For the budget cut?
Yes.
Yeah, Michaela sent out an email about a week ago.
Okay.
It was towards the bottom. It was kind of peppered throughout the email, but but then there's actually a table that shows the actual, the new budgets across all of the Bend.
Scroll down far enough.
Yeah,
It's 40% less than it was last year.
at least, yeah.
So essentially the city council had done a 2-year audit of the neighborhood associations, I guess is a word that makes sort of sense.
The roadmap and all that stuff.
And then in June,
Right.
they voted what to do going forward. So it's a flat 55,000 divided by the 13 neighborhood associations going forward. And I realized that is the number that it used to be before we got the increase in funds that was sort of tied to the creation of neighborhood leadership alliance. And it is a flat number. We have no idea where it came from. You do have that chart, Ross.
Yeah, I can bring that up.
Yeah. What they did is they looked at what everybody spent, and the half of the neighborhood associations don't have a functioning website or any sort of communications efforts going on at all.
Yeah, tell me about it.
So they sort of use that as the new baseline. And then they just did a sort of a percentage slash from there.
Is it uniform across the board? Or is it vary between?
No, everybody, they took the percentages that you'd been allocated previously and took that percentage and applied it to the reduced total. So everybody got
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So if everybody just wants to take
That's how government works. Don't spend it, you lose it.
everybody can just take a look at that. We can just leave that up there as we're gonna talk. So just for, not perpetuity, but just for the understanding of, this is a board meeting and we're at the beginning of a new year. We're trying to figure out what to do going forward. In the past, we've worked with our neighbor, Southeast Bend. The city has purchased last year a trailer that is designed for outdoor events and everything like that. They've sort of asked us to utilize that and have more public events outdoors, utilizing that system. The city has also given us access to their mailing list, which has saved us definitely a lot of time, but also some money. And they have also given us access to their version, or to SurveyMonkey, but we use
MailChimp.
MailChimp. So we probably won't be switching our service providers. On that note, I say all of this because a lot of the neighborhood associations, everybody does things differently. So there's a reason why some places don't have websites and some do. And going forward, the Old Farm is most likely going to be making a presentation to city council or talking directly to city councilors, essentially about the future of the neighborhood associations. That is sort of where we are at.
When is this gonna happen?
already happened.
This is for the new fiscal year that started, July
I know they
1st.
had something about a month ago. Is that it?
That was the vote, and it all went
No,
into
it was-
effect on
it was
June
kind of
5th, or
a,
July 5th.
Something over at 15th and 20th, in the courtroom.
No, that was,
Oh, that was, so the city council has been asking the neighborhood associations to participate in various public outreach programs or concepts. One of them was a public safety event, which was a month ago, and that was at the
Street, what, is it, neighborhood, street,
the court.
safety.
Yeah, I couldn't make that. Yeah, we weren't there. None of us could make it.
we went, it was an interesting turnout. The police were there. It was heavily focused around the police, and that event also was focused around the implementation of the city of Bend doing radar
automated traffic.
automated traffic enforcement. Brian was our representative. Brian, do you want to give a summary or?
Well, I think the gist of it is they're saying they're doing it. And so, starting in 2025, they're going to begin to implement automated traffic enforcement, which could be colloquially known as photo radar, but that's not really doing it justice. They're trying to either augment or replace police assets in the enforcement of traffic laws in Bend, and that's an area where I'm not quite clear because they use different language, and it almost sounded to me they made a strong case for justifying the many directions that police officers are torn in executing their job, and that they have X number of traffic enforcement that you'll see on motorcycles, for instance, in the summertime. There's only a few of those, and then when they have to go to traffic court, they're not on the bikes. When they have to go to this, they're not doing it. When they're called away to do this, they're not doing it. So they made it clear that they've heard loud and clear from the community that the community wants stronger enforcement of the traffic laws in Bend. What they basically are saying, they're doing the best they can. They're fully staffed, but they don't. The Police Chief Krantz made the case that we're staffed, but we're not We don't have a proportionate number of officers given the size of our community. It is what it is. And so the language of whether automated traffic enforcement is going to be augmenting or replacing is, to me, is an open question. But it's strongly felt to me like the replacing was a big part of it. And initially, they are going to use and build out systems on 5 intersections in Bend. And those
Stoplight intersections.
stoplight intersections. So
That's for running red lights.
so
red
you
light
can read,
infractions.
you could read into that for us, obviously Reed Market and Third Street is one of the principal intersections which will get dressed out. They shared statistics that their research
Do
showed
we have
that
that report on the website? I think Dirk had uploaded it.
their system showed in a 24-hour period of monitoring Reed Market and Third, there was 600 violations of running red lights.
At that one intersection?
At that one
One
intersection.
intersection, 24-hour period. And so the idea is that this technology is fairly advanced now, and it can see you coming, it can see you going. It is also, it's going to, and I asked the question, and the response was that it's going to be literal. And so it would or could, I think it's the answer, it would include such things as cars violating the pedestrian crosswalk. So if you pulled up too far on the light and you invaded you could get a ticket for that in the mail. If you make a right turn through the bike lane, you could get a ticket in the mail. So it isn't just about running red light, and it isn't just about speeding. It could and would include the myriad violations that they see as rampant in these intersections. There was a request and some general discussion about taking that technology more mobile. In other words, not just putting it on 5 signaled intersections, because we all identified in the NA's present that we have stretches of road where there is no signal anywhere nearby, but the traffic problem is significant. And I think everybody's NA has those long stretches of road where people egregiously violate speeds and whatnot. And so the idea of growing this technology and putting it in the back of a pickup, for instance, parking on the side of the road, is a very effective tool. It's been out there for decades. It just, gives people, the understanding that if you're going to be so callous in regards to the traffic laws and the safety of others around you, that you should be looking for a ticket. The tickets aren't cheap. I think they said the lower one was like $290 or something like that.
They would start issuing tickets at 10 miles an hour or more than 10 miles.
11. So legally in Oregon, you have to be going 11 miles an hour or greater over the posted speed in order to get cited. That's Oregon statute. They don't have any say in that.
Cited by automated systems.
Automated.
Okay.
And what that means in terms of the basic speed law, which is that which is safe, which around here is a big deal when it comes to snow and ice. I don't know how that would be interpreted when it comes to automated, but
So to clarify on that, one of the takeaways that I did gather is, although this is being called automated, absolutely every single ticket before it actually gets sent out will be reviewed by a police officer, looking at that footage and then saying, yes, this was a violation. No, this was not a violation. So the police are not being removed from the system. There's still going to be, it's just the police presence is being removed from a car pulling you over to somebody sitting in an office doing 3 hours of work watching these cameras.
it's an important distinction. Thank you for bringing that up, because the other piece of this is that they will soon put out an RFP. I think there's a handful of companies that basically do this work. And the city is gonna be sort of hands-off. I mean, this company, as they're outlining it, would be responsible for the technology. They would be responsible for the capturing of the offensive images. They would be responsible for identifying the perpetrators, and if the facial image of the driver is not clear, they toss it. If they don't have a good take on the license plate, they toss it. But to James's point, if they have all those things, then it gets touched by a human being saying, yep, and then it goes out. So there is a human involved, but it is very low manpower.
And it still goes through the court system.
It still goes through the court system, and it has the exact same, your traffic citation experience is identical as it would be today. Only the officer might not be handing it to you, you might just be getting it in the mail. Everything else from that point forward is the same.
And then where were the speed cameras going to be set up?
They did not say, they said 5.
Okay.
But I think you can safely say that Reed Market, given the enormous volume of violations they cited, that would probably be the first place.
Okay. I thought it was limited where they could put it as well, like
So
residential. or
it was, so
something.
they said, regarding the mobile units, because we inquired about
We don't
15th
have.
Street. And 15th Street is considered a residential street, so that cannot have one.
Oh,
Okay.
And when I say 15th Street, I'm assuming from Alpenglow to Reed Market, which is where we get the most people that want police enforcement. The system cannot go there.
Okay.
And then
Is that true? I mean, the initial system can't go there, but if they expand it to being mobile,
so
are they precluded from being on residential streets?
I believe that was the case. And that is a state law. A lot of this, they were deferring to state level rules. This was not the city of Bend or the Deschutes County Sheriffs or anybody creating something. It was them, and I was sort of shocked. There's a lot less things that they can use this for than people. People are assuming Big Brother. It is extremely limited.
The state is definitely holding them back
Yeah.
from full implementation.
And then, ironically enough, I sort of sat there and when we thought about where they would go, well, basically there are no stoplights on the west side. So they're all gonna be on Third Street or Greenwood, most likely. It's very difficult to find a stoplight on the other side of the river.
Yeah, the more roundabouts, less signals.
The more roundabouts, less signals. So just sort of that going forward from an equity standpoint.
And an effectiveness standpoint.
And an effective standpoint.
Because I think I'm personally a supporter of the technology, and I think it can do. I think we have an egregious problem in our community with the drivers' behaviors, and a lot of unnecessary accidents and deaths, which I think that this can help change attitudes. But if you know the 5 intersections that you're not supposed to misbehave at, they're pretty easy to skirt, and people can still be driving through our neighborhoods, whether it's 15th or Ferguson or Prosser House or whatever, at enormous rates of speed with almost impunity. So it's a start, is what I would say.
I have a feeling a lot of tourists and people that live in the county are going to be affected by this at a higher level than the locals. And I say that because you're right. If you know that Reed Market and Third Street is a heavily monitored automated interchange, then if you go through that every day, you're going to follow the rules. But if you live in Sun River and you don't know that, there's a good chance you might get the ticket.
And the funding from the tickets is distributed per the state guidelines. So it's shared in different places. It's not a windfall per se for the city or policing. It goes into a fund that is predetermined in terms of how it's allocated.
It was a percentages based allocation.
Did they identify what that was?
They did.
They did.
I think it was
Number one?
35, 10,
The
55.
state.
The state got, I think, 55 or 60%. And then,
Of the citation or of what's left over after the?
Yeah, because a lot of it goes to the states because of the courts and the processing, and then of course you got your vendor.
Yeah, the vendor who's putting up the bill for
the vendor's
everything
gonna be a
takes their
fee
cut.
on it.
Yeah.
And then there's the ticket.
And the
Yeah.
point, that's a good
Yeah.
point. One of the key points that was made is that they consider this revenue neutral. Ben's not paying anything. We're not.
That much I knew. I just
There's
figured
no-
that the
there's no money
vendor
coming
company was
out.
taking 65% of it. or
No, they're
something.
not taking this, they're not, it's the government taking most, but it's not the local government, and there is still the potential there for profit motive. But I'm not sure that the way that Oregon has them kind of wedged between, you can do this, but you can't do that. I'm not concerned personally that there's a problem lurking there.
So,
Next year,
yeah. Did you have any questions about that? Since basically all the neighborhood associations were invited to show up and provide input, and
How many were there?
I
Then
think,
Southeast wasn't.
I think 10 or 11. And I say that because the city asked us to basically put out a survey, which we did, and then provide those results to them, which we did. But some of the other neighborhood associations sort of missed that in the communications. But they still showed up and found a representative at the last minute.
literally a round table whenever NA got asked questions, representative of their areas and their concerns. So
Yeah,
I
I
thought-
would have been, unfortunately, I was on the coast. So.
yeah, so I
So
all in all, I
make
think
it.
they got good feedback, and I think in a general sense there was a fair degree of unanimity in terms of the commonness of the problems. And I think that the things that maybe the city didn't go in with, they left with it, which I felt like, okay, they heard. And that I can't think of anything that came up that where you or your association would not have agreed with the general consensus of all the other entities.
Ultimately, from my experience, this came from years of every neighborhood association doing survey after survey, and the number one complaint citywide was traffic enforcement. This is their attempt at addressing that.
Now, when it goes into effect, are the police going to be redeployed to other areas, or is there going to be freed up from doing traffic?
So they're
enforcement?
not necessarily freed up. That's something that Brian was trying to get a point at. I think I'm probably wrong by one or two, but apparently there's a sergeant and they have 3 officers and they're dedicated to traffic enforcement. And then they have 2 or 3 other people that, depending on the season, also slide into that category. But at any time, if there's another instance or another episode of criminality occurring, traffic enforcement gets pulled away from the task.
So what about accidents?
Well, I think that that's probably the core initial step. And I think that's big focus on the intersections. You have the infrastructure in place. You have data that shows high levels of violations. You have the worst kind of interaction between cars. They're not glancing blows, they're usually T-bones or head-ons. So you have the most serious injuries. You have the biggest impact on commutes. And so I think that that's an obvious place to start. And we'll see whether this program, expands into providing some assistance in other less obvious areas. But
Yeah, so it's not that the police are being redeployed.
Well,
It's,
the reason I'm getting to that
Yeah.
point is there's another issue.
well, that was the question I started with about whether it's augmenting or replacing. We don't really know. They used words that suggest that it's going to provide coverage that doesn't currently exist.
you can ask your question if we can remember this. A few of us were there for half of it at least. Brian was there.
Well,
for
this is something that happened to me personally. I got into an accident about 6 months ago. And I rented another car. The other car was violating 3 state laws. They were standing in the middle of the road, not taking advantage of a nearby side street, violation number 2, and not indicating an unusual hazardous situation, violation Great. Insurance company finds me at fault. I hit black ice on River Road and I couldn't stop. So I've been fighting that one. Insurance company. I even have dash cam footage showing everything. Police wouldn't do anything. So I'm gonna have to go before the council, and say, this would be a great thing for the police to do. Maybe they can't issue a ticket, but they can review it and given their expertise, say, well, it looks like that guy's at fault. You're not, all that. And that might be probative to the insurance companies.
Yeah, they definitely didn't go down that rabbit hole.
And if I had been there, I probably would have talked about it.
And I shouldn't use the term rabbit hole. Brian himself was in a motor vehicle accident that wasn't his fault a year or so ago. But on that note, I'm actually surprised your insurance company.
Well, they applied this one size fits all. Oh, you rear-ended another vehicle. Doesn't matter if there's 3 suns, 4 moons, and it was black for 48 hours, you were at fault. In other words, nothing mattered except the fact that you rear-ended another.
And I don't think that that's what this particular system that they're implementing isn't really meant for that.
No, but-
And I don't really think that it's going to be, it might get used in collisions and whatnot, but I think the bigger thing is trying to change behaviors so that people
I mean-
aren't speeding, running red lights, and trying to share the space with pedestrians and
My
bicyclists.
guess is if that incident that happened to you happened in one of these intersections with this monitoring system, that monitoring system would then become the default of who was violating what law first. And so that may have made a difference in your situation, because if somebody was violating the rule and then that caused you to rear end them, I can see how you'd be able to get out of it. But I don't know.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
these are hypotheticals.
lawyers and insurers for that stuff. So,
Yeah.
Anyways, the whole idea, the reason I'm gonna talk to council is this is something that the police can do. And it would be a benefit to those who get into accidents, especially those dash cam footage. They review it after the fact, said, yeah, it looks like you weren't at fault. And if they could issue an opinion, then you could beat the insurance company.
Well, I wouldn't hit at the city council. I'd just go to the police department.
I talked to the police, I didn't go to the head, and they said they can't do it. So I offered to take it down and show it to them.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird, but, so.
So we told everybody about that event. So that event was a city-sponsored outreach to the neighborhood associations. A previous one before that had to do with not the street safety. What was the transportation utility fee? So in the last 12 months, the city's reached out to the neighborhoods twice to get public input. I say this because going forward, one of the things that we are tasked for, and I'm changing subjects. If you have any questions, please stop me. Changing subjects because the neighborhood association, one of our tasks has been land use notifications. The old farm has always gone above and beyond. We notify more people than legally obligated to, because we believe land use affects a greater area than the 500 feet or the 750 feet, which is the linear distance that the state uses. So once again, this is just now we're gonna go back, or we're gonna go to thoughts. Should we? I would like to approach the city council in the next 6 weeks with certain questions regarding how we should use this budget going forward. If you look at what we have,
well, I mean, if you're talking about the budget that we've been assigned, it's largely already consumed by the requirement of having a general meeting and promoting it.
so yes, so to clarify, we are required to have one general meeting. And what has been eating up the majority of that budget is that the old farm sends a postcard to each and every address and door in our district. We are not required to do that. That is something that this board chooses to do because it is the only way that historically we have thought we could actually know that we're getting to everybody. Our email addresses versus our doors are around 18%. So that is a number that we should do whatever we can to increase. On that note, what we did do is we picked up another tablet for large meetings and any gatherings going forward. One of the problems we've historically had, and not just us, other neighborhood associations, when we get people to sign up, we've been doing the same thing that they've been doing for a century. Pen and paper, write your name, what's your email? And then afterwards, we had to transcribe that into the computer systems. And a lot of times, if you get a letter wrong or anything, then the email is wrong. And that basically is worthless input information. We're going to be using one of our new tablets. And what we'll do is we will have it set up so that if someone comes in, they can immediately say, boom, enter their information themselves. And we'll have it so that you can switch from English to Spanish or whatever language Google Translate allows us to do with the quick form. And then it'll go straight to our website. That should save us a lot of time and in signing up and making sure we're getting people's information
Accurately.
accurately.
That's a big deal.
And also by being digital and having the ability to do it in another language, it should help take down one more barrier of communication that we've historically had. So I think that's a big check mark going forward. So when we talk about what we're required to do, yes, we're required to have one general meeting. The general meetings can be whatever topic. They do not have to be what we do. Normally, we have chosen 3 or 4.
Yeah, they've not been business meetings. They've been areas of community interest.
Areas of community interest. There's usually 1 or 2 political levies or something, something we've always tried to tie in because there's always something that's on the ballot. Do we want to continue that mindset going forward? Do we want to just rent out Alpenglow Park and throw a hot dog cornhole tournament?
Well, you gotta have an event in addition to your annual meeting, as I understand. So 1 community gathering event plus 1 annual meeting.
Is that the case?
I wasn't aware of that.
If that's the case, then we do not have the funds to do that.
Oh, fewer ice cream cones.
Well, I mean, just to advertise a community event, yes, we can have their trailer, so we don't need to rent a sound system. But if you want anybody to show up and not have $500 of ice cream go to waste,
You gotta have some sort of entertainment. I mean, we did that a year and a half ago at Alpenglow Park.
Right.
And,
That was pretty successful, but that was a substantial budget. But in her email, she also.
got about 40 people there.
oh, no, that was your independent.
Okay.
That was at
Not the
Alpenglow
joint
Park.
one.
Now, we just had our annual meeting, a month ago. Over at Jewel Elementary and having 30.
Okay.
That's all we can handle.
So you're not talking about, because the joint one we had, there was at least a couple hundred people there, right?
Oh, no, the joint one we had, the total number was 5,000, but that was Parks Southeast and us.
Gotcha.
Different.
Yeah, that was a huge event.
You're talking about the grand opening.
Yeah.
The grand opening.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was mostly city funded. So, I mean, we have to fund
Well, that was not city funded. That was mostly Parks and that's
well,
yeah.
that's city.
Okay, fine. I have to separate Parks from the city.
I know.
They're very adamant about their budget separation.
So,
So how do we, so if that is the case, so we have to have a community event and
We need to confirm
I was
that.
kidding,
Yeah.
can you confirm that now for us?
Michaela's email?
I thought, it'll take me a couple of minutes, but I thought in her email, she said that funding for community events could be in addition to,
Yeah, that's true.
and that's part of the.
So does that mean, because at one point of the email, they said we could get more funds if we ask for them, but then is that only if we are the private entities? That was where she lost me in the whole outreach or in that whole communication?
Because they wish to provide the funds upfront based, if it's approved, there needs to be an LLC or an entity set up for those funds to go to, can't go to an individual.
So does that mean, and this is just me hypothesizing, if we team up with a nonprofit and we co-sponsor an event with a nonprofit or 2 or 3 nonprofits, get them to get an additional amount of money, then we could get the trailer.
Probably, but I think you'd have to put a specific scenario in front of them. I think that sounds right.
Yeah, but that's their sponsorship program. So I found it and I'm bringing it up now. You know,
And I only say that because I know, a few organizations in town that they're always looking to increase their outreach beyond their membership.
I know a few as well.
Yeah, I mean, if we did, called up Oregon Adaptive Sports and had an event at Alpen Glow that we co-sponsored.
And so, yeah, in this preview of budgets for FY25, kind of mentions that the city's sponsorship program. I should probably actually just click on that and bring it up. We can fill out an application in September to have our general meeting or additional event funded. Looks like we can't do that before September. I'm not sure why that's specified, but so be it.
Probably that's when everybody's going to be back and actually reading emails.
Good.
I do think, I think with the reduced budgets, it does call for efficiency and creativity. And creativity could be, we talked about the potential for supporting the women voters on candidate forums. You could also have adjoining, NAs working together on a common, event outreach. So you had a speaker, and if we had somebody at Caldera, that could be both districts could do that, and share the cost in order to get more engagement, because we aren't going to have, the budget to do major outreach but once. And I think that we should retain that for our, whatever we want to call our general meeting. And
So from what I'm hearing from you, you are for maintaining at least one general meeting where we do similar format to what we've been doing.
yes,
Karen, your thoughts on that statement?
No, I agree.
Ross?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, Jen, if you're still on, definitely chime in whenever. So then if that's the case, we know how to do that.
Jim.
Yeah, and that's what we do. We had our annual meeting, we had a number of speakers and displays and all that. We didn't have refreshments or anything like you guys do, but
You have in the past.
in the past, but now we're only 2 of us on the board, so we have to limit what we do. I mean, a year ago we had 5, so
Yes,
we were in
yes.
great shape. That didn't last.
I didn't hear Jen.
I haven't seen her microphone unclick yet, so.
I'm still here.
Well, did you hear the question directed towards you?
About the meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, how long do we have to think about it?
I think a while.
A while, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, judging by the budget and the timing, it takes us literally, at the best of times, we can put something together in 10 weeks if we can find a location. So,
But if you're only, I mean, I think the bigger question is, given the reduced budget, we really only can, support one big event if we're going to promote it with postcards. So I guess
Yeah.
where are you thinking something other than the general format that we've pursued? And would you like to see something different than that?
I want to think about it, and I want to research a couple of things and see how we could utilize most of, being able to hold something in the park, but also making it educational. I do feel like it's the Alpengo event was so well received, and I was hoping that we'd be able to do something like that again, as well as the general meeting, because when people do come to our general meetings, those are really well received as well. Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Yeah.
And hypothetically, if we want to do both and their little funding doesn't seem to work for us, we can always just go petition city council and say, your guys' new funding is holding us back from doing this. Something to say we can't do that. These are their guidelines. These are their minimal.
I'm down for petitioning out the gate. This is garbage. Like, how are we supposed to be connecting with our district and the community members if we don't have the funding to do so? It feels like they're trying to cut us off at the knees.
Yeah,
So,
as I've been reading through this webpage that I'm sharing right now, it looks like any community event that we wish to host would fall underneath this separate funding. And so we can just fill out a sponsorship request form and we can get funding for it. It looks like they're not going to review it until October if we fill it out by the end of September. So if we want to do anything before September 30th, funding would not be available to us, obviously.
yeah.
So there are some opportunities there where we can get additional funding for things like a big party at Alpenglow, for educational events, as you mentioned, Jen. Something else that I wanted to get to at some point was kind of expanding upon the Bend beautification program, get some funding for that, for helping to, plant trees, replace trees, add beauty bark or riprap, those like the rocks, along some of our streets that just didn't really get filled out in the past for whatever reason, and just kind of help improve the look of our neighborhood, our district, whatever we're supposed to call it.
Pollinator pathway Bend can help get natives put into those type of strips if you're interested in that.
Well, that's a possibility of an event. We could basically co-sponsor a pollinator pathway, pick like, I don't know, a half mile of various areas around the district. And if we had one or two, like pollinator pathway provided the plants, we helped advertise it, got some labor along with them. The city would probably, I'm assuming, provide some staff or at least some guidelines. I know in the past they've reached out to us regarding how to deal with the swales and the planter strips that have always been historically under I don't know, dead.
Underwater.
Overdead.
Yeah, some of the trees around, the Murphy and 15th roundabout have passed on, or else maybe on the bridge. There's one or two trees along there that just kind of need to get replaced. There's some others along 15th.
Are they being watered? They say they're supposed to be watered. Are they really being watered?
Good question.
You
I don't know. I
I've
don't
never found
know.
anyone who says, yes, I watered.
Well, the real way to check is if you just walk the path and look for an irrigation line. If there's an irrigation line, it's being watered. If there isn't,
Well,
it's not.
You're assuming that irrigation line works entirely. I'm assuming that some of the trees are dying, maybe just because they weren't viable trees, or maybe because some of the irrigation system isn't working properly as well.
If
So all
there's-
that stuff needs to get
I mean,
fixed.
because like Reed Market has no irrigation.
Yeah.
So
But they
apparently
were hand watering when the first series of plantings all failed.
Yes,
And they had to pay for a second series of
Yes.
enhanced, and then they had to pay to have the little cart come on and water them every week. And short of that, I don't know how you expect these trees to live, so.
and a minimum of 2+ years of water for anything's roots to take hold deep enough to get down to
Supposed
where
to be 3, I thought it was 3 years.
you're the expert.
2 years.
I was gonna say, if you want to give us, the tree code is finalized. Are you ready for that report?
Yes.
Are you guys, can we switch to the?
Yep.
This question is pathways. I heard that one.
Pollinator pathway.
Pollinator Pathways, it's a nonprofit. Jen, could you get that information to Jim? They've been to our general meetings.
Okay.
It's a good organization. The idea is any plants that are gonna be in a right of way or a public, whatever, should be native species that are
Meant to live here.
meant to live there, as well as help the bees and the birds and the bees and everything like that.
Butterflies.
Yes.
Jen, could you, Pollinator Pathways is like an established 501c3 and everything, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna drop the website in the chat.
Okay, thanks.
there.
Flicking all my salt off me.
Because if we can get a program together that involves them, we might be able to get sponsorship from the city that actually helps fund efforts as well.
I think that the direction of that conversation is good. I mean, I'm not fixed on having a big general meeting, but it does feel like there's some baseline responsibility to try to reach everybody in our district. And I think we've had enough discussion that we don't know another way to do that. And whether it's tremendous success or not, I think it's an effort that's worthy of trying to do. And if we have any budget left to do stuff like this, where we could do targeted engagement with specific objectives, I like that. I think that'd be good.
Okay, then here's everyone's homework assignment. For the next 45 days, think about ideas and thoughts. And I say 45 days because that's well before their time to fill out the form. And if we look at October and anything outside, then basically October, the first 3 weeks of October is it. After that, the weather, we have no idea. We definitely aren't going to be planting anything in November or anything like that.
It might be just we get this set up for next year.
Yeah, for spring.
Correct. That is why, so 45 days to sort of think about something. We could do an outdoor event like that and do a general meeting in the spring and basically just have them. So that's all possible. I'm just giving us the timeline because if we do anything outside, well, there is a weather issue, and just through the timelines of their September and everything, it would be a very, we would have to be able to go fast
I think
if we're gonna try to do it in the fall.
we've been dealt a different hand, and I think we have to adapt. Another thing that I just wondered about from hearing other NAs talk about what they do is they have one that piqued my interest was they just have a schedule. They just show up somewhere. Like they have a corner of business they partner with or whatever, and however once a month or whatever, they go there and eat the pizza or have their ice cream and they welcome in their neighborhood to come and talk to them. A very open forum.
And we can do that.
And I'm since we're seeing a little bit more retail business in our area, maybe we could start looking at strategic partnerships and have them set out far enough in advance so we can say, in March next year we're going to be at so and so. Come in and say, oh, and because otherwise, if we can only touch people once a year, we're just invisible. So if we can make meaningful impact on a stretch of road with plantings or something like that, people can see that. If we have to augment the general but we have limited budgets, maybe having partnerships, public-private partnerships with businesses might provide small but consistent engagement opportunities for people who want to engage. And we can put it on our website and we don't have to do mailings and stuff like that, but between social, email, and our website, maybe you get a few people to come out and we don't, just disappear into the woodwork, for a year.
Okay. So yeah, for the rest of July, early August, we just sort of everybody think about possibilities. And then for the last 5 minutes, Karen,
Oh, tree code.
tree code, give us the summary that you
Yeah.
are been aching to give us.
I kind of, for years, I think thanks to the citizens of town, they've made it clear that they want some of the mature trees saved. City council, I think, consistently ignored this for some years. And I think the voice of citizens became just too loud. They want mature trees saved. City set up a tree code committee, TRUAC, last April. There are 15 people on the committee, engineers, architects, arborists, city planners, developers. Corey Bittner, Vice President of Polish, was on the committee. I was. And they, over the course of 9 meetings, they submitted to the city a mechanism that they think that trees should be preserved. But now you have something called the DBH. If you want to impress people, say, such and such a DBH. That's diameter of breast height, which is 4.5 feet off the ground. The city has set up 2 categories of trees. One is protected and the other is priority. They want to encourage people to protect the larger trees. So if you are a developer, you're going to develop a site, you have to do a tree map identifying every protected tree on the property. That is to say, every tree with a 6-inch DBH or larger. And in terms of the criteria, you have to initially try to save 20% of the protected trees. For example, if you have a lot that has 10 protected trees on them, big trees, over 20 inches of diameter, you have to save 20% or 2. 2 trees have to be saved. And it sounds like a place to start. What the weaknesses, I think, of this plan will be is mitigation, because so much depends on the design. It turns out, listen to the architects on this committee, that there's more than one way to design a development to get the same number of units, same density, but take a little bit more time and you can save trees. Instead of a cookie cutter platter, for example, you have blocks marching on. You could have some winding streets, maybe wind around some trees. It was interesting listening to these experts. But the city council has adopted the code. They had a first reading in June, I think another reading, second reading coming up. And if there are no more objections, then I think it'll go on to the books that become law in August. The opposition to it was interesting, city at the council meeting, is the developers. You hear this over and over again. We can't save trees if we're going to provide affordable housing, because we have to have such high density, we've got to cut down all the trees. Every one of the developers that testified, none of them do affordable housing. Affordable housing, for folks who don't know, is for people who make 80% or less of the area median income, which used to be 76% a couple of years ago. I think it's gone higher. We had Corey Bittner at the city council meeting saying, oh, this is going to destroy any chance of affordable housing. Polish starts his homes at $750,000. People making 80% of the AMI cannot afford a home of more than $325,000. Corey Bittner, as far as I know, has never built an affordable house in his life. And I think the city council realized that too. But it reflects the kind of an ingrained opposition to trying anything new or anything different. It reflects the marketplace here. We had a subdivision proposal, a public hearing last Thursday for a developer that's going to put 124 units on the east side of the library that's going on 27. And all of those units, not a one is going to be affordable. They're all going to be market rate. So you have an economic factor here that has nothing to do with trees. What I thought particularly interesting is that there's some people on the planning commission who intend to watch every development coming through to see what kind of efforts are made to save some of the mature trees. And if the developers don't try and make that effort, I think the subject is going to come back before city council. And I guarantee it's going to come back. But it was an interesting exercise. Things can be done, but you just have to want to do them.
So then we find out the final results in August?
Well, yeah, I think it'll pass in August.
Okay.
The second reading, I think, coming up soon, like maybe this week. And you have a first reading of a bill, second reading, and then if the second reading passes, I think it takes effect a month later, I think.
Are there any city council meetings in July? I thought they were all canceled. Or I didn't think we have any in July.
What?
I don't think there's any city council meetings in July.
Well, I guess.
next time.
We'll see.
Yeah, so they either voted on it and then it happens.
I'll find out. I'll find out.
But there's no more movement on it. I don't know.
Anyway, I think the citizens spoke up, but enough citizens spoke up loudly enough that the city started to get the idea that maybe people really care about this. We'll
Is
see.
there any action on the COID?
Is there
property?
what?
Anything moving on the COID property, you know?
I've not heard. I saw Robbie last week. I should have asked. And I did
You,
not
you mean
ask.
like by the river?
Over by Brookswood?
Oh, yeah, there was the big wash. There was a flood. The canal failed a few days ago.
It
So-
did?
Yeah.
Wait, what happened?
Oh, it was on the news. So the property we're talking about is by Brookswood. So I guess the canal at some part, maybe it was some of the machinery that has to
They,
do with
they
the,
just piped that
yeah.
like
well,
5 years ago.
No, what it came down to was the canal company to sell this land to polish more affordable homes, of course.
Yeah, right.
They wanted to make a very narrow trail. They're under the FERC, the Federal Energy Regulation Commission. And they wanted to, in effect, make a very narrow trail and clear cut lots of trees. And the Keep Bend Green, I think it is, they filed an objection with FERC. And the last I heard, that was still before the federal agency.
It is, and it is
What happened?
10 years before any tree can be, before anything has to be decided.
When did that happen? I gotta get the hearing. The vote on it.
I've been talking with Judy Clinton, who's very behind all of that. And essentially the bizarre view easement of Mountain or of whatever villages or
Mount
Mount
Bashor.
Bashor Village on the other side of the river is now what is the holding it all up. And that easement doesn't end for
No, no.
tenant.
it
No,
is-
absolutely.
No,
Well, you're talking about- I think
I
you're
read
talking
that
about
a
two
year
different
ago. My
things.
husband and I approved that. And in other words, that's been on the books for a long time.
Correct.
And
And it doesn't expire.
I know, not
for
for
like-
another 10 years, but this concerns property outside of the view easement. That the CYD wants to build they have to have some kind of recreational trail.
Right.
And they want to make it very narrow and cut down lots of trees. And that's what's before FERC.
Yes, at this point, everything that I was told is on hold. Nothing is.
Okay, I'll find out,
Yeah,
I'll find out what's
they're-
happening with FERC,
um,
because it's been months.
The surveyors and the bulldozers are not coming yet. And I think in the long run, the next UGB could address that. And that will start probably in the next 2 or 3 years. So it is 7:30, absolutely rambling meeting. Thank you, everybody. Let's stop recording. See everybody. Would you stop licking it? Jeez.
How's the heat affecting her?
Huh?
How is the heat affecting her? My dogs seem to be.
Oh, no,
okay.
that's a mole.
That's a mole.